The Nintendo 3DS has officially been retired. Now, you guys may not know this, but the 3DS meant a lot to me. It was the first handheld I bought since the PSP, and the most modern console I owned at the time of its release. I never really picked up a PS4 or an Xbox One, and like literally everyone else, I never bought a Wii U. So this was my main way of experiencing video games for the longest time. So, with the system officially retired, I thought I'd take this time to list off my top 10 favorite 3DS games of all time. Now, full disclaimer, this is my own personal list. So if things don't line up with your own list, that's because either I didn't enjoy it enough to put it here on my list, or more likely simply because I haven't played it. There's a ton of games in the Nintendo 3DS library. With that said, let's start things off with number 10. Number 10. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions. Okay, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit here, since this is a port of a Game Boy Advance game, but it's my list, so... Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was my favorite Game Boy Advance game growing up, and the first game I ever remember really 100% completing. So hearing it was going to be remastered on the 3DS was an absolute dream come true for me. All the characters here have so much life and personality. Every new character feels like they belong in Mario's universe, and every character is memorable, from the villains Cackletta and Fawful to the thief Popple or Prince Peasley, who I always hated for some reason as a kid. Him and his smug Anyway, back on track here. The gameplay is the perfect kind of turn-based battling, where button presses can amplify damage of your attacks or protect you from damage incoming from the enemy, much like another one of my favorite games, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. The music in this game is on a totally different level. I've gotten themes from this game stuck in my head for years, to the point where I legitimately thought that I had made them up, so hearing them again after all that time was amazing, especially with them being remixed. So, with all the good stuff I have to say about it, why is this game at number 10? Well, as I said before, it's a port of a Game Boy Advance game, and largely speaking, there isn't much changed here, aside from some mildly improved visuals and remixed music, which you can swap out for the original tracks if you like. Plus, there's a really nice music player, where you can just sit back and enjoy the music, even if the system's closed, which is a really big plus for me. Love the music in this game, I can't stress that enough. But because it's so similar to the original game, I wouldn't feel right putting Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions above any of the other games on this list. That, and personally, I didn't enjoy the other half of this game, the 3DS original side game, Bowser's Minions. For me personally, the story wasn't super engaging, and the gameplay is way different from Superstar Saga, with a more hands-off approach that I didn't really care for. And when half of your game isn't enjoyable, that's not a good thing. It's just good that the other half happens to be one of my favorite games of all time. But anyway, for this next item on the list, let's talk about a 3DS original game, shall we? Number 9, Miitopia. Now, here's a game I bet no one was expecting, and even less of you actually played. Released very late in the 3DS's life cycle, Miitopia is a fantasy game where you're Mii, basically Nintendo's equivalent of online avatars, quests through the land to stop an evil wizard who's stolen the faces of everyone in the land and attach them to monsters. You have to travel and free the stolen faces along the way with a party you completely customize along the way, as well as completely being able to customize like all of the villagers and all the important NPCs. Thanks to the Mii Creator system, I was able to do all sorts of things in this game, like make the king of the land Jack Black, and the ancient wizard who helped shoot Zoidberg from Futurama, and quest along with my friends and my favorite anime characters, original characters, and other movie stars. You make your own fun basically every step of the way here, and half the fun of the game is seeing how the characters you put in the game react with one another. The game is an absolute joy to play through, from start to finish, but after you beat the main game, there's not much that drew me personally back in outside of one or two new areas. That said, I truly do cherish the time I had playing this game. Miitopia is most definitely an underrated classic. And speaking of underrated classics, number 8, Codename Steam. Codename Steam seems like the kind of game that everyone should be playing. I mean, it's a game developed by Intelligent Systems, creators of Fire Emblem and Advance Wars, for those unaware, which focuses on a group of American literature's finest heroes commanded by Abraham Lincoln, facing off against eldritch horrors in a steampunk future setting. I mean, how cool is that? Plus, the game has a pretty star-studded cast, including Adam Baldwin, Will Wheaton, Michael Dorn, and a whole host of voice actors that have been in a lot of famous stuff, like Michael Sinterklaas and James Urbaniak. Honestly, part of what kept me playing was seeing who I'd get to recruit next and who they'd be played by. The game controls more like Valkyria Chronicles than Fire Emblem, with it being a turn-based strategy game where you move around a map to get to an objective or simply to kill all the enemies. Plus, if you have the Robin, Lucina, or Martha amiibo, you can scan them in to get playable steampunk versions of them in the game, which I think is pretty cool. The game can be difficult, especially towards the end, since enemies can and will attack you while you're moving and before you're ready for them. Honestly, the high difficulty curve is why, despite the game being on this list, I haven't actually finished the game yet. But I will absolutely go back to it someday soon to smash that alien menace. Wait, did someone say smash? Number 7, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. Now, poor segues aside, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS is a phenomenal game. Heck, you don't need me to tell you this. If you're watching this and you own a 3DS, you already have this game. You don't need me to tell you how good it is. Now, the reason I rank it at number 7 is just personal preference, and because it's also sharing a console release with the Wii U, which makes it kind of hard to justify, again, putting it higher on this list. I will say that the 3DS exclusive mode, Smash Run, is one of the best new modes added to the series in recent memory, and it's a shame that it hasn't returned for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, at least not at the time of this video's release. Also, I thank Sakurai every day for his inclusion of Mii Fighters to Super Smash Bros. Because of that, I've been able to fill the roster with just about anyone I wanted, from myself to Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, or Guts from Berserk. The amount of fun and options this brings is just wonderful. Just as wonderful as the next game on this list. Number 6, Dragon Ball Fusions. Now, here's a game I never thought we'd get to see here in the States. Dragon Ball Fusions is a story set in the world of Dragon Ball, the anime franchise of the same name, and it stars your own personal created character and some kid who wish for the world's greatest tournament to happen, and in doing so smashes the entire universe of Dragon Ball together into one big mess. In doing this, the characters from the anime that you know and love get fused together, and look, I genuinely don't remember broad strokes of this game's plot. It's just the most fan service-based game Dragon Ball has ever gotten, bringing in characters from Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and even Dragon Ball GT, and you can fuse them together. How awesome is that? The game is literally the answer to debates I would have as a kid, where I would ask things like, what if Frieza and Cooler fused? It's just a joy to play, and it features the best overworld in a Dragon Ball game, period. It should also be noted that Fusions has more character customization options than its console counterpart or equivalent, the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games. In Fusions, you can play as a Kai, as an android or a demon, in addition to a Saiyan, human, Namekian, or Majin like you can in the Xenoverse games. But you can also customize the color of any of the clothes that you wear, unlike Xenoverse, for some reason. The gameplay is pretty simple. You play as a squad of Dragon Ball characters inside a ring against another group of Dragon Ball characters. Knock the whole other team out or deplete their life bar and you win. Now, the main draw in the game is finding and adding other Dragon Ball characters to your team, which can lead to some frustrating RNG and trying to, get the right characters to appear. But overall, the game is a lot of fun. But collecting people to put on your team, that sounds like the next game on this list. Or should I say, games? Number 5, Pokemon X and Pokemon Sun. Okay, so I'm kinda cheating the system here, but it's my list, and Pokemon games are essentially the same game every single time, outside of spin-off titles like Pokemon Coliseum or Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee. Now, X was the game that got me back into Pokemon after about a decade's absence. I hadn't played Pokemon games since Pokemon Crystal, so to see all the advances since then was an absolute marvel. Pokemon Sun has the same great gameplay as X, but with a vastly improved and more engaging story. That's why they share a spot comfortably here at number 5. What? You want me to say more? It's Pokemon! You already know what it is. Now let's go to number 4. You see what I did there? Let's go. Like Pokemon Let's. Number 4. Azure Striker Gunvolt Striker Pack. Again, kind of cheating here since this is technically 2 games, but they're on 1 cartridge, so this is way more justified than that whole X and Sun thing. Azure Striker Gunvolt is a series my friend Steve first introduced me to, and it is an absolute joy to play. Azure Striker Gunvolt puts you in control of Gunvolt, a man with the unique ability to manifest lightning, and his battles against the evil Sumeragi group, who control the people of the future with an iron fist. Along the way, you rescue a girl named Jewel and take care of her in between levels. Now, each level, you fight a different member of the Sumeragi group, with each area amazingly distinct from one another. You could be at the top of a neon high-rise building, or deep in the depths of an abandoned, powerless factory, each area tying into the boss in some way. The music is great too, having both catchy instrumental stuff, as well as some straight-up J-pop in the form of your ally, the Muse. Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, which is also on this cartridge, takes everything great about the first game and improves upon it, adding a new playable character in anti-hero, Copen, a man who hunts people with powers like gunvolts, as well as a bunch of new characters and a few new types of gameplay, like an extended motorcycle sequence. These games are some of the best action platformers I've ever played, and I highly recommend everyone play them, if not on 3DS, then on Switch or PC. And you know what rhymes with PC? Number 3, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. Okay, so not all of that rhymed, but bear with me on this one. Remember how I said that the Gunvolt games were some of the best action platforming I'd ever played? Well, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse is by far the best, bar none. Now, fellow YouTuber Best Guy Ever has a whole video on why the movement and abilities are fantastic in this game, and I'll put a link to that somewhere so you can watch that for yourself. But anyway, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse is actually the 3rd game in the Shantae series, but you don't really need to follow the other games to understand this one. The game follows the half-genie, half-human Shantae as she tries to stop an ancient pirate's curse from destroying the world. The game is wonderfully written, with hilarious dialogue, and pretty clever puzzles to solve as well as I said, the best action platforming I've ever personally experienced in a video game. The music is also amazing. It's one of the few games that I actually own the soundtrack to, and I regularly find myself listening to it while I'm on a drive. Thank you, Jake Kaufman. No matter what way you slice it, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse is definitely worth a look. Oh, and please put Shantae in Smash! Number 2, Star Fox 64 3D. Okay, so remember at the beginning of this list when I said that Mario and Luigi couldn't make it that high on the list because it was just a port of a GBA game? And how Smash couldn't make it higher because it shared a release with the Wii U? Well, I know what I said, but Star Fox 64 is just objectively one of the greatest games ever made, okay? I loved this game to death when I played it on the Nintendo 64, and having it on the go just makes it even more fantastic. There's a new difficulty setting, updated UI, and gyro controls made specifically for the 3DS, as well as updated graphics, but largely speaking, it's still the same game I know and absolutely adore. You are Fox McCloud, tasked with defeating the evil Andross and saving the Lilat system from tyranny. This game is amazing and has a ton of replayability thanks to its multiple branching paths. No matter what you do, there's no wrong way to progress in this game because all roads lead to Venom and Andross, the final boss. The characters and the lines they say are eternally memorable, and it's just so good, you guys. It's just so good. The one gripe I have against the game is the fact that most of the original voice cast unfortunately did not return to record their lines for this remake. So it brings a damper on my nostalgia just a bit when I'm playing. But that and the fact that, again, this is just a port of an existing game keeps Star Fox 64 from taking that top spot. So what is number one? Well, before we get there, I'd like to touch on some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. Hyrule Warriors Legends. Now, I know I'm instantly going to lose my gamer cred for saying this, but Hyrule Warriors Legends was the first Legend of Zelda game I ever played. Despite owning a Nintendo 64, a GameCube, and a Wii, I never played any Zelda game until this one, and I absolutely loved it. The story was unique and engaging enough for me to follow, despite not having any prior Zelda knowledge, outside of like some cursory stuff, because, you know, the internet loves to talk about this series. And I absolutely adored being able to play as all the different characters, like Midna and Medley and Young Link and Midna. I sunk at least 100 hours into this game, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But after a while, as it is the case with most Warriors, or as they call them in Japan, Musou games, but especially this one, with all the DLC and different maps, you get burnt out. Especially if you're a completionist like me and you want every weapon or costume for your favorite characters. There's just so much to do in this game that you just, after a while, you just kind of give up. That's why I never rebought the game when it came out for the Switch as like the deluxe version. There's just too much game here for me to start over. And ultimately, that burnt out feeling is what stuck with me the most after playing this game, which is why it didn't make the list. Kirby Planet Robobot. Okay, so Kirby's cool, right? You suck up enemies and gain their powers. How do we make that even cooler? Just put him in a mech and have that mech have the same powers that he does. That idea just prints money. I have always enjoyed the Kirby games growing up, but I was never a super avid fan of the series. I didn't go out and buy every single game. But when I saw that Robobot, I had to go for it. The gameplay was so engrossing, I spent 3 full days during a beach vacation sitting inside and playing that cute little game, ignoring my family. Of course, once I 100% completed the main game's story, that impulse to come back and play the game never really happened. With Miitopia, I would still pick it up a few times after I beat the game, but after I beat Kirby Planet Robobot, I just never felt like picking it up again. It's still a fantastic game, though. I absolutely love it. Tank Troopers. Now this is another game I bet no one's heard of. This game was announced in a Nintendo Direct, then released like a year later as an eShop exclusive game to little or no fanfare. Tank Troopers is a smaller, more budget title, a 3D tank battle game where each person picks a tank, either one, that's real or one that they made up for the game, and several troopers to take with them into battle. Each trooper has their own unique ability, like Medica can heal your tank, or Paintball can shoot paintballs. Look, some of these aren't too subtle. The point is, Tank Troopers is a fun little game that absolutely deserves more than it got. The only reason that this game didn't make the list is just because Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga has a nostalgic hold over me. Otherwise, Tank Troopers would definitely be number 10. But anyway, enough honorable mentions. Time to get to what you really want to see. Number 1, Fire Emblem Awakening. When I first bought my Nintendo 3DS, I bought the console and 2 games, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon and Fire Emblem Awakening. The game focuses on you being woken up in the middle of a field by a man named Crom and his band of adventurers called the Shepherds. Together, you embark on a massive journey that will change this ancient land as you know it. Within minutes of starting up Awakening, I knew I had made the right choice in buying a Nintendo 3DS. This game has the single best turn-based combat system I've ever seen, and some of the most wonderful and fun characters I have ever played with. By the end of your journey, you feel like these characters are your family. And if you've been playing the game right, at least one of them will be. All the dialogue you can unlock through gameplay makes the world feel fleshed out and alive. The characters all feel and sound unique. There's a reason why Awakening saved the Fire Emblem franchise. On a more personal note, playing Fire Emblem Awakening also introduced me to my friends Rich and Steve, who became some of my closest friends in college, and I'm happy to say I'm still great friends with them to this day. It's little exaggeration to say that Fire Emblem Awakening changed my life, and that's why it's my favorite Nintendo 3DS game of all time. So, what did you think of my list? What are your top 10 Nintendo 3DS games? Do you have any games that mean a lot to you? Let's make this a discussion. And don't take me too seriously. After all, I'm just joshing. Thanks for watching the video. If you like what I do here and you want to see more videos, hit that like button or leave me a comment down below. And if you'd like to support me on a more personal level, consider buying one of my books on Amazon. Links are in the description. Thanks, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.